I think that,
That's my
that
concern.
goes into a lot of the people, frankly, like, the limousine liberals who love to talk about climate change and they love to talk about fascism and democracy, right? Because like they have the brain capacity to do it because they live in places like the Pacific Palisades. And don't get me wrong, like that isn't something to laugh at or to be smug about. And I wrote a whole Substack on the fact that like basically partisanship has taken over our humanity because we have people on the left who basically say that um, the celebrities deserved it because they're rich, and people on the right who say that they deserved it
Yeah,
because they're
they're
liberals.
liberal. Yeah,
And
disgusting. Yeah,
the thing about it was that, like, why are you not blaming the government? Like, the government's responsibility, the first and foremost, is to protect you, is to make sure that you are safe. Like, that is the foundation of the social contract. You give up some of your liberties, you give up some of your freedoms in exchange for security. And that is security from enemies, that is security within the cities and your jurisdictions, and that is safety from natural disasters, right? And what's so fascinating for so many people, and I think why they're so befuddled and why that sense of trust is even more broken, is because for them, like, they do pay these super high taxes, right? They do pay super high taxes at the city level, at the state level, and at the federal level. And in their mind, they're saying to themselves, okay, well, I pay all these taxes to the city, and the city apparently decided not to ensure that the reservoirs were filled up in case of this, right? I vote for people who supposedly believe in climate change, and yet they don't make sure that they have the resources in order to fight the natural disasters that they themselves admit are going to get worse here, right?
hmm
That for hundreds of years, you have documentation about the like people who ran the missions, the Spanish missions say that you shouldn't build in certain places and you shouldn't build in certain ways because of the Santa Ana winds. And instead of, listening to the indigenous population who have been doing, forest management and, controlled fires for millennia, for thousands of years, they don't do this, but they make sure to do a land acknowledgement before they have the press conference about the fires that they couldn't
right.
control because they didn't listen to the indigenous populations. And that's where I think it's the sense of trust between me and this other entity, right? It's like, how do I trust you to hold your word? Because you told me that if I pay these high taxes, that I'm going to be better off than my fellow Americans who live in Republican places who don't pay high taxes, right? So you've already broken your promise to me. That's number one. But then the other thing too is I can't trust you because you have no credibility. Because instead of living up to what you said your ideals, which were, well, we believe in climate change, we need to focus on climate change, and so okay, if you know that climate change is bad, then what are you doing to mitigate the problem, right? And instead they're like making sure that, like, water goes back into the ocean in order to like save fishes, right? Or if you're going to claim that you respect the indigenous populations and you respect, the land and everything of the sort, well, why isn't the person who's in charge of the forest management service for the city of LA, why isn't that person an indigenous person? If you want to talk about actual diversity, if you want to talk about actual representation, wouldn't it make sense to put that person in charge? Because you get rid of all the DEI stuff anyways, right? I don't even want to talk about like, oh, the head of the fire chief or,
Yeah,
cutting this or
no.
that or whatever, diversity hires. I don't care about that. What really is the crux of the issue is the fact that it is becoming clearer and clearer that Democrats are not holding themselves to their own promises, and their credibility is zero. And instead of acknowledging that they have no credibility, that they are hypocrites, they just accuse the other side of anything from being dumb to being a racist.